Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I've been working on a group of charter boat reels recently, and this one kind of is indicative of what you find. They fish them until they break. So we got three things going on here. We have a free spool release that's got a broken spring. So I'm going to show you how to correct that eccentric spring. I've got a handle that's loose. That's not a big deal per se, but I also have a skipping anti-reverse dog. So we're going to show you how to work on a typical Penn reel. This is a Penn 60. It's identical to the Penn 65 internally. The exterior is what is different there, in that it has the wider carriage on the 60. But most Penn reels will use this setup. The only difference will be what side the spring mounts from on the eccentric, but beyond that, what you'll see here will apply to most Penn reels. So I start by removing the exterior parts. And while I do that, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody involved in keeping the general population safe during this pandemic. Those include our firefighters, EMTs, first aid, police, first responders, everybody that's an essential employee working in transit or food delivery services or the like. Thank you for everything that it is that you do. It truly is appreciated. Even though the pandemic is winding down, please remember these folks. There are a lot of people still in the hospital and still contacting this deadly disease, and they're there to help those folks get through it all. So we started by taking off the handle screw and the set screw that holds the handle in place. I'm just checking the rounding out of this the gear sleeve here, so I think we're going to replace that as well. So we got a bonus here. We're going to do the eccentric spring, we're going to do the gear sleeve, and we're going to do the anti-reverse, all three pieces of which have failed on this reel. And again, these reels are subject to heavy use. They're out there fishing day in, day out, at least 200 plus times a year, in most cases probably 270 times a year. They only seem to take December, January, and February off. So if they're out there doing that, you can bet that any weakness in the reel will manifest itself, and we'll talk a little bit about what causes each one of these to fail. The rounding out of the gear sleeve, the anti-reverse dog which fails, and the eccentric spring which breaks. And that's all what I will call high use parts, and they will eventually snap or break based on the number of times that they're interacting with their pieces. So the gear sleeve itself, this piece, rounds out after a certain amount of time. Then in this case we have a broken side plate, which we're going to have to replace as well. Boy, this is, talk about bonus coverage here. This is the little stud that rides on the inside of the case mount here. And that's broken off, probably because this broken spring trapped itself inside. All right, so let's get busy then. The spring itself is floating in the case somewhere. You want to start by taking off the trip lever on the exterior side of that. And now you can't just replace the spring on that. We're going to have to take this whole side plate down completely anyway, but you can't replace the spring just by removing this. You have to remove all the pieces and parts to do that. In order to do that, you're going to come in and do the bridge. There's 4 screws on the bridge. The 2 up top are partially threaded. The 2 below have full threads on them. And we're going to go take those off right now. This is a good time to tell you, if you like what you're seeing, if you like reel repair and you like to understand the strengths and weaknesses of reels or how to fix them, maybe you have one of these problems, then come on and subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe, hit the notification button. That notification button will tell you the times when I post the reel videos, and it will give you a heads up in terms of which ones are coming, and you'll be able to see if that's one that you would like to watch or not. Okay, a whole fistful of parts just came out now because we've taken everything off the side plate. These are our yoke springs. This is our yoke and gear. This is the spring for the dog. And I guess we'll take a look right here at the dog and why that failed. And we have the eccentric, which is missing the spring. the jack. And we have the gear assembly, which we have to remove because we're going to remove this gear sleeve because that's rounded out and will no longer hold the handle. And by rounding out, I mean you should have square shoulders on this, and this has become oblong, and now the handle will not turn. So what happened here was the screw that holds the handle on got loose. That freed up the tension to hold it in place, and it just got pushed around and around, and it wouldn't grab that anymore. To remove the gear sleeve, then, we're going to just take a pick. There's a pin that holds this in. Take a pick, and we're going to push that pin through. And most of the time, you can just do it by hand, and that's an example of what we just did here. Sometimes you need to tap it out. Most of the time, you can pull it out. So we're going to shut this off right now. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to get a replacement gear sleeve, and I'm going to get a replacement side plate, and we'll pick this up in the next moment or two. So the first thing we looked at was the rounding out, and here's a new bridge sleeve which has nice squared shoulders on it, which is what we're going to look for. And we'll just clean up the old bridge. You want to get a little bit of grease onto the bridge post. You can put that new gear sleeve on. There's a pin that holds it out. We showed you how to push that pin through. We can set that. Then we can grab our main gear stack. You want to put the washer that's going to hold the anti-reverse in first. And we're going to just put a little bit of grease on the main gear so that rides smoothly. Hopefully that main gear didn't get damaged with that piece of spring floating around, so check the teeth. And we can load that main gear up. There are different washers in that main gear, so make sure that you seat them properly. There's two round washers which go top and bottom. And there's a secondary washer which goes on in the middle, which is called the eared washer. So here's the dog that failed. It might be hard to see, but it's not square any longer. It's on an angle, and it's worn. So when it goes to intersect with the teeth on the gear sleeve, it's skipping. And the solution to that is a new anti-reverse dog that has that squared shoulder. So that'll be replacement that we'll show you as well. All right, I found a brand new side plate for this, and we're going to go ahead and take the trim ring off the one. We're going to transfer that trim ring to the new side plate. And we'll just use a little piece of steel wool to clean up some of the older tarnish on this ring. You're never going to restore a charter boat's reels to make beauty queens out of them. You want to make them functional. And so from time to time you'll see reels that kind of look out of place, and this one probably will look out of place, and then it has a beautiful new side plate on the one and not the other. We need to transfer the bearing from here. That's a 10 millimeter. Nut, we'll take that off. I think we're done with that side plate. Put the new bearing, put the old bearing back in the new side plate. We have the one spring. Let's go ahead and put the other spring in. Well, before we do that, let's go ahead and show you how to put that eccentric one in. Because if we start dangling springs around, it'll get a little difficult. So this is your eccentric spring that broke. The tag end goes into the case here. The hook end goes up, and it goes through the eccentric. There's a little hole. You just have to look on the back for that little hole. And then just mount it in with it being completely out of alignment, if you will. But you need to seat it, and you need to keep the spring in the hole. You need to have the tag end and a spring in the hole. Now that won't work that way, because if you come on the back side, it's nowhere near that. I used to be able to do this with hand strength. I can't do that any longer, so I use a little assist I'm just going to grab a needle nose pliers, ever so gently hold the stud on the eccentric. If you get too much or you go crazy with the pliers, that pliers will rip up that brass, so just be careful with that. You want to find the balancing point there where the spring is compressed but not overloaded. Then when you turn your back, you will have the clearance to mount that release lever. And then we can find the screw that goes with that. We'll load that in. And we'll get one step closer. So we showed you how to replace the gear sleeve. Now we showed you how to replace the broken spring. And in a moment we'll do the anti-reverse dog. Just check it to make sure that you have the release, which you do. We're going to use our brush to get some grease into that bearing. And we'll put a little bit on the eccentric. Next step then in the rebuild process would be those two springs that we started to load. Those are the yoke springs. Then we'll clean that yoke assembly up and put that together. In this case it looks like it's just dried grease, so we'll just grab that. We're going to put new grease on. I'm using Penn Precision Reel grease, not because it's a Penn reel, but because it's fishing reel grease. And it'll work on just about any reel. I do encourage you to use fishing reel greases and oils when you do your work on your reels. They're designed for marine usage, and you rarely get into trouble using those. I've had a lot of different greases over the time used on these things, gun oils and Vaseline and all kinds of interesting products. Please stay with the fishing reel greases, you won't go wrong. Alright, we've got the yoke assembly in, we have the new bridge assembly in. We're going to press down and place the main gear through, and then rotate this gear about perpendicular to the bottom. You want to take one of those fully threaded screws on this, put that through the hole where the dog is going to load, get the new dog, and now you have a cavity here for that anti-reverse spring, which is going to make that dog hold to the track. Simply load it in the cavity by putting one end here and putting pressure on the other and hold it. It is a spring, and that spring can shoot. Complete the rotation holding down the side plate, and just get this started. Don't tighten it all the way down because there's fairly tight tolerances on these, and you do need to make sure that you have all of your screws started before finishing it. And you have two with the shoulders and one with the full thread. The shoulder goes up top. And I go opposite. I go northeast, southwest. Now when I get two of them opposing in place, now you can tighten them down. You shouldn't have problems loading the other two. Fully threaded one goes on the bottom on this side. The other shoulder one goes up through the spring on this side. We have the ferrule which goes on. We have our star adjuster. Just looking to knock some of the tarnish off of this one. There's no sense doing the work and not taking the time to clean it if possible. Now granted, some of these are really fished heavily and you're not going to replace or fix boat rash and the like, but if you can get that off, go ahead and do it. Now we're just trying to line this up to get this adjuster on. You need to make sure that it goes on square, otherwise you'll start stripping it out. There you go, we got it square. You can hold the shaft and turn it. Sometimes you can put the handle on there if you need to. And then we'll come over to this side. Having fixed all of those issues, we're going to put a little bit of grease into into the non-gear side bearing. It's probably off camera. I apologize for that. Now this one's got a lot of rust and corrosion and salt. You're not going to be able to fix that. Clean the back of the spool. Put a little bit of grease on the stud that's going to mount into that bearing. And load that in. Load the side plate in. Long screws go in the crossbars, short screws go in the reel seat. So if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, and maybe you're stuck, maybe you're repairing something and you just can't figure out what the next steps are or where you went wrong, maybe you put it back together and didn't get the results you wanted. If you have any problems, ask them in the comments section. If I can help you, I'll try to do that. If you want a reel repair, well, I do reel repair by mail as well. And if you leave me an email, I'll tell you these repair services and the like and where to send them. And just use the business card that follows for that. I'll be happy to get back to you with that information. And then finally, if you like the video, please indicate that as well. Those likes help my channel and help me to keep doing these. And thank you to all of you that have subscribed. I think we just passed the 13,000 mark, which is just amazing to me. And I appreciate everybody who continues to watch. All right, last screw goes in. Handles next. Now we'll have a nice firmly seated handle here. Sometimes you got to pay attention to that handle. Sometimes when it rounds out the slot in the handle as well. And you would have to get a new replacement handle. In this case, the handle was the one that was doing the damage. But these new Penn handles, they're only aluminum shafts. They're not the steel shafts with the chrome finish any longer. And sometimes those aluminum pieces break as well. You just pay attention to that as part of your problem diagnosis. Okay, here we go. That's the last piece of that. Give it a spin. We're in free spool. Make sure that we lock up. Just adjust the side plate bearing here a little bit. All right, first question. Do we have an anti-reverse? Well, we certainly do. Do we have a shaky handle? No. Do we have a free spool? Yes. All the problems were solved. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I showed you a lot there. I showed you how to fix the eccentric spring. I showed you how to fix the anti-reverse dog. I showed you how to replace the gear sleeve and how to tune up a reel in the process. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing all of you a great day.